Mia had always been the perfect choir member, devoted, graceful, and admired by all. As the church's lead singer, her voice was considered a gift, one that made the congregation feel closer to God. Her image as a devout Christian woman was flawless, a model for all the young girls in the church. Yet, beneath her well-curated public persona, Mia carried a burden. It started with Sarah, the choir's new assistant, a young woman with an infectious smile and a passion for music that mirrored Mia's own. The two had bonded over rehearsals and shared devotion to the ministry. But Mia's feelings for Sarah had shifted from admiration to something far more dangerous. The way Sarah's voice echoed in Mia's heart, the way she smiled at her, it was impossible to ignore. Mia tried to suppress the feelings, pushing them aside, but they lingered, growing stronger with each passing rehearsal. She couldn't admit what was happening inside her, and she certainly couldn't tell anyone. Mia had always been the church's shining star. What would they think of her if they knew the truth? It was late one evening after choir practice, and the church was nearly empty. The lights cast long shadows on the walls as Mia and Sarah remained behind to clean up. Their conversation was light, almost too comfortable. And Mia found herself laughing more than usual. Sarah was packing up her music sheets when she turned to Mia, her expression softer than usual. "You sing with such passion," Sarah said quietly. "It's inspiring." Mia felt her heart race. There was something in Sarah's voice that made the words feel different, charged. She smiled, brushing it off. But deep inside, she knew that Sarah's words weren't just about music. It was about something else. As Sarah approached to hand Mia a sheet of music, their hands brushed. The touch was electric. Neither of them pulled away immediately. For a moment, their gazes locked, and an unspoken understanding passed between them. Mia's breath hitched, and before she could stop herself, she leaned in, their lips meeting in a quick, desperate kiss. Mia pulled back instantly, heart pounding. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Mia left the church that night, her mind a storm of confusion and guilt. She had kissed Sarah. It wasn't just a fleeting mistake, it was something she had wanted. The kiss had ignited a spark within her that she hadn't known existed, a fire that couldn't be ignored. As the days passed, Mia tried to pretend it hadn't happened, but every glance she shared with Sarah was loaded with unspoken tension. She avoided the other choir members, fearing they might notice the change in her behavior. Sarah, on the other hand, was quieter than usual, unsure of how to act around Mia. Every interaction felt awkward, filled with tension. The guilt weighed heavily on Mia's shoulders. She was living a double life, the devout choir member and the woman who had kissed another woman. How could she reconcile these two sides of herself? The church had always been her refuge, her safe place. But now, it felt like a cage. Mia couldn't escape the feeling that the walls were closing in on her. Mia and Sarah continued to avoid each other, but the strain was palpable. It wasn't just the awkward silences, it was the way they both seemed to feel the pull of something they couldn't ignore. They could only run from their feelings for so long. One afternoon, after a particularly emotional service, the two women found themselves alone in the church's practice room. The tension between them was thick, like a storm that was about to break. "Why are we doing this?" Sarah's voice was soft but urgent. Mia looked down at her feet, unsure of what to say. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what this is, but I can't stop thinking about you." Sarah moved closer, her hand gently brushing Mia's. "Neither can I." The moment was electric, as if the world outside the room had stopped existing. They were alone in this bubble, and nothing else mattered. Without a word, their lips met again, this time with more urgency. This time, there were no regrets, only the raw intensity of desire. The affair between Mia and Sarah continued, each encounter more dangerous than the last. They found ways to be alone, late-night rehearsals, early morning practices, and moments when no one else was around. But each time they met, the guilt grew heavier. Mia found it harder to look her fellow choir members in the eye, especially as they continued to praise her for her dedication to the ministry. They hid the affair from everyone, pretending like everything was normal. But the lies took their toll. Mia found herself unable to focus during choir practice, her mind constantly drifting to Sarah. Her once perfect life in the church was slipping away, and she didn't know how much longer she could keep the secret. One evening, after another passionate encounter with Sarah, Mia found herself staring at her reflection in the church bathroom. She looked different now. The guilt was written all over her face, but the love she felt for Sarah was undeniable. Mia was becoming reckless. The affair with Sarah had intensified, and the risk of being discovered was growing. She tried to convince herself that she could stop, that it wasn't too late to walk away, but every time she saw Sarah, she couldn't resist. One afternoon, after a particularly intimate moment, Sarah stopped her before she could leave. "Mia, we can't keep doing this," she said, her voice trembling. "What if someone finds out?" Mia's heart sank. "I don't know how to stop," she whispered, barely holding back tears. "I can't just walk away." "But we have to," Sarah insisted. "We're risking everything, your reputation, our place in the choir, everything we've built." Mia wanted to scream, to tell Sarah how much she loved her. But the words didn't come. Instead, she nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of their secret. It was a Sunday morning, and the church was buzzing with excitement for the service. Mia stood at the choir stand, trying to focus on the music, but her mind was elsewhere. She caught Sarah's gaze from across the room, and for a split second, the world seemed to freeze. They both knew that they had reached a breaking point. Later, as the choir members dispersed, Mia's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from Sarah, reading simply, "We need to talk." When Mia entered the practice room, Sarah was already there, but she wasn't alone. Standing in the corner was Pastor Jacobs. His stern gaze met Mia's, and her heart sank. "We need to talk," Pastor Jacobs said coldly, "about you and Sarah." Mia felt her world collapse as Pastor Jacobs began to speak. "We've known about your affair for some time now," he said, his voice unwavering. "The entire church will be informed unless you step down from your position." Tears welled up in Mia's eyes. She had worked so hard to build this life, and now it was all falling apart. She turned to Sarah, who looked just as devastated. "What are we going to do?" Mia whispered, her voice breaking. Pastor Jacob's words rang in her ears. "You have two choices. Step down, or we expose everything." Mia knew there was no way out of this. She had to choose her love for Sarah or her place in the church. Mia spent the next few days in a daze, consumed by the choices before her. She could leave the church and be with Sarah, but the fallout would destroy everything she had worked for. Or she could step down from the choir, severing her ties to the church and losing the life she had built. One evening, after a long conversation with Sarah, Mia made a decision. She couldn't hide who she was any longer. She couldn't pretend that she didn't love Sarah. The next day, she resigned from her position in the choir, knowing that the consequences would be severe. The church community would be outraged, but at least she would no longer live a lie. Mia and Sarah left the church together, their hearts heavy but full of a new sense of freedom. They didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, Mia felt a sense of peace. The road ahead would be difficult. They had lost so much their place in the choir, their connection to the church community, but they had gained something far more important, the truth of who they were and the love they shared. As they walked away from the church, Mia knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that was uncertain but finally true. This story teaches that hiding who you truly are can slowly unravel the life you've built, no matter how perfect it looks on the outside. Mia's journey shows the emotional toll of suppressing love and identity in order to meet others' expectations. Her relationship with Sarah wasn't just about romance, it was about truth and the cost of pretending to be someone she wasn't. When confronted with losing everything, Mia chose honesty over comfort, love over fear, and herself over the image others wanted her to maintain. Though the fallout was painful, what she gained was far more valuable: peace, authenticity, and the freedom to love openly. The lesson is that living your truth may not always be easy, but it's always worth it.